Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. And Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We're joined tonight by our friends at the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history to celebrate Decent People, a brand new novel by De'Shawn Charles Winslow. And he's here in conversation with Dr. Daniel Black. We're so excited to have De'Shawn back. He is also the author of In West Mills, which was a Center for Fiction First Novel Prize winner, an American Book Award recipient, and a Willie Morris Award for Southern Fiction winner. He was also a finalist for the LA Times Book Award, the Literary Book Award, and Publishing Triangle Awards. He was born and raised in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and graduated from the Iowa Writers Workshop. He is joined tonight by Dr. Daniel Black, who is an award-winning novelist, professor, and activist. His published works include They Tell Me of Home, The Sacred Place, Perfect Peace, 12 Gates to the City, The Coming, Listen to the Lambs, and Don't Cry for Me. In 2014, he won the Distinguished Writers Award from the Mid-Atlantic Writers Association. The Go On Girl National Book Club named him Author of the Year in 2011 for his novel Perfect Peace. Perfect Peace was also chosen as the 2014 selection for If All Arkansas Read the Same Book by the Arkansas Center for the Book at the Arkansas State Library. The novel has been reprinted more than 10 times and has been heralded as an American literary classic. It's also a Charis. Dr. Black has been twice nominated for the Townsend Literary Prize, the Ernest J. Gaines Award, the Pharaoh Grobley Literary Prize, the Lambda Literary Award, and the Georgia Author of the Year Prize. Dr. Black lives here in Atlanta and is the founder of the Ndugu Nzinga Rites of Passage Nation, a mentoring society for people of African descent. His debut essay collection, Black on Black, on our resilience and brilliance in America, is out in 2 weeks.
That's right.
So we want folks to be pre-ordering that as well tonight. So we'll be sure that everyone has access to that link so that we can continue the celebration of Dr. Black's work. So we're really glad to have you all here. We're glad to have our friends watching from around the world and our folks who are local with us in the house physically tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick it over to Dr. Black and have a robust conversation and celebration of this book, and then we will open it up for questions to our folks watching virtually and our folks here in the house. So without further ado, thank you for being here.
Fantastic. I am really excited. First of all, we authors understand the importance of Pub Day. So, this is De'Shawn's Pub Day. So, congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
Absolutely. When I got this invitation, I have to admit, at first I was like, who is De'Shawn? De'Shawn who? And then I looked you up and checked out In West Mills, and I really liked that book very much. And then I jumped into this one, and it's very different. It's very different. I like it. It's very different. I didn't know it was a mystery, right? So this is going to be awesome. We have about 50 or 60 people here in the house with us, so we're happy about all the folks who are here, and all of you out there in virtual land. We're appreciating you. Thank you so much for being here. So De'Shawn, if you don't mind, first kind of set us up. Give us a summary of just what the book is about.
Sure. So the year is 1976, and the Harmon family is 3 siblings: Dr. Marian Harmon, her sister Marva, and her brother Lazarus. They have been found shot to death in their home. The authorities don't really care for racist reasons, and their half-brother, Limp, is the prime suspect. And the reason for that is because he has a strained relationship with his half-siblings and has for just about his whole life. His fiance, Josephine, called Jo, has just returned to town to retire, and she's just come back from a trip to found out about the murders and that he is the suspect. She believes that he is innocent, and she's out to clear his name amongst the town people because, again, the cops don't care. And as she goes about that investigation, she starts to uncover a bunch of dark secrets about, just a bunch of dark secrets
Right.
that calls into question who could have done this, and could my fiance have indeed committed these murders?
Yes. When I ran across the name Lim, I said, I wonder if Mr. Winslow here is being metaphorical, right? Because he is limp in some ways, right? And then, of course, I was reading, and I said, this book is about more than murder. That kind of frames it. But there's racism in this book. There's sexuality in this story, right? This story in so many ways is about Southern culture, right? And how Southern culture moves. It's also in some ways about how divided Southern culture is in terms of racial lines, right? I have to admit, I read about Savannah for a long time before realizing she was white. And then once I realized she was white, I was like, oh, okay, then that's what's wrong with her, you know. Well, what is your hope that folks will get from reading this book? Like, in your head, what's one or two takeaways from this novel?
One of the takeaways has to do with Lent's name. So there are kind of two reasons why I gave him that name. One is just a silly little family reason. I have a niece named Olympia, and her nickname when she was small was Limp. And I always thought that was cute. You know?
Okay.
And so when I was trying to come up with names for Limp, I was having a hard time, and I don't remember why I landed on Olympus. And I was like, oh, I'm going to nickname him Limp. You know? But also the metaphorical reason is that he is limp. He's kind of helpless in this situation. And so to your second question, one of the things that I wanted to point out is how during this time and even today, how Black men are not given the benefit of the doubt that so many others are given. You know, we can go out on the sidewalk and yell to the top of our lungs, and next thing you know, here comes a squad car, you know, or several.
Right.
And we could just be singing.
Right.
But that doesn't happen with other people.
Right.
So one thing I want readers to come away with is just kind of stepping back and think about the way they view Black people. Not just Black people, but Black men. I think all Black people are vulnerable, you know, in this country.
Right. But
I think Black men, we have a special fear that we carry around, you know, in this police state. I think the other takeaway, the bigger one, is the piece about homophobia. And I think I would want people to know that when young queer people are victims of homophobia, it can carry on with them for years. It can be so hard to shake off that trauma, whether it's physical bullying or verbal. You know, once that seed is planted at a young age, it can be so hard for them to regain self-confidence and feel normal, you know.
Right. You know, there's an incident in this book, and I'm always a little cautious to talk about books on Pub Date because I don't know what I can give away, right? And so, you know, I will talk about one incident though that really kind of stayed with me, and that is where there's a young boy whose mother suspects him of being gay, and she's trying to figure out how in the world she's going to cure him of this, right? How she's going to heal him of this. And she goes to this psychologist, she goes to this doctor and says, you know, can you help me? You know, my boy is in trouble, you know. And she says, absolutely, just bring him to my office, just leave him with me, I got it, right? And of course, what we find out that she does is so unbelievably reprehensible, right? So one little spoiler alert, this doctor tries to solicit two other boys to beat him up. Physically to just accost him, and of course as I was reading it, I said, were even doctors this ignorant? You know, I mean, like, who's that stupid? Right? But even folks in the medical profession, but it had to be true, of course, because, you know, in the 70s, people had these shocking camps that they would send gay children to. But those were run by medical professionals. And it just made me think of, like, what in the world have people done to queer children over the years? And not just, you know, just ugly comments, but even in the name of professionalism, even in the name of science. And I just really wonder if that was kind of one of your ways of trying to make us not just rethink homophobia, but even to look at the ways in which we have institutionalized it.
Absolutely, yeah. The reason I have that happen in the novel, because as you mentioned, Marian she's a doctor. She's been to medical school. She's very intelligent.
Absolutely.
But her upbringing, her religious beliefs, you know, that's there too.
Right.
Yeah. And she believes that a good whooping can change a person. You know, she believes that to her core.
Yeah.
That she's willing to have it done to someone else's child.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just going to keep on asking questions until ER stops me, because I have like 20 questions. I won't get to all of them. But I wanted to know, how was this book different than writing in West Mills?
It was different because this time I decided that I wanted the book to have a very clear plot line.
You felt like that was not true in West Mills?
Correct. It was in West Mills has a very subtle plot.
Okay.
You know, where you watch the character not age and her family members age and secrets come out along the way. But there's no like central question to sort of follow. At least in my own reading of my own book. But I think maybe some readers may disagree. You know?
Okay.
But this time with decent people, I wanted a very clear question for readers to follow. And so that was different because I couldn't sort of just float along as I wrote and let everything happen as it came. I had to plan a little bit. You know? I try not to outline a book, but I did have to say, okay, you have to decide who the murderer is, because that's what's going to help you get to the end and decide what clues to draw.
Did you always know who the murderer was from the beginning?
I did. And that was my first big mistake, not deciding who the murderer was. I changed my mind like 4 times.
Why was that a mistake?
Well, I probably could have finished it sooner if I had locked down who the murderer was earlier on, you know. Yeah. But it was really fun. It was a different experience. And sometimes it got challenging and I thought, oh, maybe I should remove the murderer, you know. But I was like, no, this is fun.
Yeah.
So it was a different experience. I'm not eager to write another, plot-driven book right away, but I would like to write more. Yeah.
I love the idea of mystery. I absolutely love the idea of mystery. As a writer, I don't think I can write that. Because I don't know how to string people along. Right. I would tell you by chapter 2.
Yeah.
Who the murderer is, like she did it, and then I guess the story is
it got really close. I think even in the first chapter, I had the murderer's name mentioned like too much.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my editor was like, this might be a giveaway. I mentioned the name a time or two, and then pull away.
Right.
Mention the name too much. And all was over.
And are you born and reared in North Carolina?
Yes, Elizabeth City.
Elizabeth City, okay. The proverbial question is that kind of the metaphorical setting of this book? Like, were you thinking about Elizabeth City as you were writing the physical context of this book?
Well, it's the town that neighbors it called South Hills, North Carolina.
Okay.
That's where my mom was born and raised.
Okay, so.
And so that it's a little, well, now I don't know if that population is smaller than Elizabeth City, but it definitely was when I was growing up.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's West Mills is modeled after South Mills.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your process. Are you one of those writers where you say you don't outline? Are you one of those writers who writes like 3 or 4 hours a day, religiously every single day? Are you one who writes as it hits you? Like, yeah, tell us a little bit about your process.
I write as it hits me.
Yeah.
Yeah. With M. West Mills, I was in an MFA program, and so even though I wasn't writing a novel from the beginning, you have workshop dates that you have signed up for that you have to turn in pieces.
Okay.
So you have deadlines always approaching every couple of months, but even when I would be writing for the purpose of workshop, I wouldn't write every single day. It might be 1 week, it might be 3 days. 1 week, it might be 1 day for 2 hours.
Really?
Yeah, it's very, very sporadic. With Decent People, because I sold the book before it was done, I couldn't be that laid back about it.
You wrote someone.
Yeah. But I still kind of just like diddle doddle until like 6 months until it was originally due. And then I kind of locked down every day. My friend Regina Porter and she's the author of The Travelers, she's also working on a second book. And so we did word count accountability, and we didn't say we must do 1,000 words a day. We just said, okay, at the end of the night, let's text each other and tell each other what we did, So some days it would be, I wrote 200 words today. Some days it would be, I wrote 1,000 words today. It varied. But deadlines help me.
Yeah.
I enjoy deadlines, actually.
I don't know that I know so much enjoy deadlines. If I don't write every day, I get out of the rhythm. I'm just like, I just need to be in that rhythm.
I hear you.
Like every single day. I might miss a day in a month.
Yeah.
But other than that, I have to be in it. Or either my mind will wander to something else.
Yeah.
And I'll just like,
that's my fantasy. I wish I could write. And I've tried, I've tried.
Really?
But I'll sit there at the computer and I'll say, oh, let me go on the internet and look up this thing. This thing I know I'm on some website that has nothing to do with the
It's not because I'm old. Like, I never do that. I absolutely never do that. And I have friends who say that too. They say their minds wander. I never, ever go to the internet. Like, I never do that. It's just the craziest.
Self-discipline.
Well, maybe so. I don't know,
Yeah, I aspire to.
I just don't know how to do it otherwise. How did you come up with the title?
So I actually.
And was this the original title? I always like.
Yeah, it was not. So the original title was called Pharaoh's Army, and it was because I still love that title.
I do too.
It just didn't work anymore after I changed and cut scenes and all that kind of stuff. But there was one scene when Limp and his mother are at their kitchen table, and the Harmons, the 3 murder victims, come there for a impromptu, unwelcome visit. And his mother looks out the window and says, "What in the hell are they on?" And he's like, "Who is it?" And she says, "Pharaoh's Army." But I ended up not using that scene, and so I couldn't figure out another way to make it organically work.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
Well, I'm just gonna let you know right now, and very officially, this is on record, that I might borrow that title. Since you threw it away.
Yeah. It's up for grabs.
No problem. I might borrow that. That's a good one.
I might come back later with the army of Pharaoh.
Right. That's right, because I have Pharaoh's Army.
Yeah.
When you look back now at Decent People, what do you feel like you did really well this time?
Wow, that's a really tough question. Wow, Daniel. Somebody help me. Something I think I did well this time is, even though I didn't write from the point of view of the 3 teenage boys, I do think I don't spend time around teenagers at all, and so I did have to think really hard, like, what did I hear? What types of things did I hear my cousins saying when we were 14, 15, and especially like three boys, because I hung around girls all the time. And so
more than boys.
Way more than boys.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was like, I had to really go in my head and go back into my teen years in middle school and early high school and think about the type of banter boys have amongst each other.
Mm.
And I guess I am surprised that I was able to come up with like convincing dialogue between the brothers and what they would say to their mother and stuff like that. I mean, that's what all I can come up with right now.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Who are your go-to authors?
Toni Morrison first.
Mm.
Definitely Toni Morrison.
But let me interrupt you. What's your top 2 Morrison favorites?
It keeps changing,
Okay.
but I'm gonna say Sula because that was Sula wasn't the first book of hers that I read. Beloved was.
Okay.
But when I read Sula, I was like, this is my favorite.
Oh yeah, love is hard.
Yeah. And then I read Song of Solomon.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, that's mine.
Yeah.
And then I read Paradise. And I was like, oh well, I don't know.
Oh no.
You know, it took me a couple of reads to really love Paradise.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think I might like it more than Song of Solomon.
What?
Yeah, I think I do.
We were best friends in You know what's funny is I prefer the early Toni Morrison, right? Typically. But you know, Toni Morrison is a reach and a stretch in any book, right? And I think The Bluest Eye is just a signature of hers. You know, just kind of.
I had trouble with jazz the first 7 times I read it.
Right.
And then finally I was like, I get it now.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, you got to wrestle with her. Yeah.
I don't try to teach that to my students.
Yeah.
You know.
So Toni Morrison is one go-to. Who are your other go-to authors?
Alice Walker, you know, The Color Purple and some of her stories.
Okay.
Like, I'm forgetting the title. Everyday
Use.
Everyday Use.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I love Elan Harris. I love Elan Harris's work.
Okay.
He was the first queer writer that I ever read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he gave me permission. I think his characters are very different from mine, you know. But I think his writing gave me permission as a queer Black man to feel like I can mention queer Black men in my work. You know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Writers. He has done it. B-Boy Blues, I'm forgetting the author's name right now, but James L. Harding. Yeah, so many people have done it. I mean, of course, James Baldwin, but I came to Baldwin late. You know,
Okay.
My
Not
brain,
college and not all of that.
I believe it was assigned at some point when I was like a 19-year-old undergrad, but I don't think I actually read it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I read it. But yeah, those are the top authors.
Okay.
On my list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are you a reader who reads several books simultaneously, or do you read one at a time?
Like 10 of them.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Chapter of this one, put it down. Chapter of this one, put it down. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're always in the middle of 7 or 8 books.
Always. Once in a blue, I will get. Now, if I'm reading for the purpose of, say, bourbon, those I'll stick with.
Okay.
You know? But pleasure reading, I tend to be very all over the place. I'll finish a book in, you know, it'll take me 6 to 8 weeks because
you read so many other
I'm
ones.
reading, and I'm reading students' work too. But yeah,
that's a whole nother thing.
It's very rare that I can pick up a book and like finish it in 3 days. It's, you know, I can probably count on one hand how many books I have read like that.
I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I'm circling back to decent people. As a college professor and one who teaches creative writing, right, do you see lots of promise with students, or do you tend to see students struggle with writing, or both?
It depends on the type of course. Nowadays I mostly teach intro to creative writing.
Okay.
And so with those classes, a lot of the students take it because it's like the easy A, you know, and they are not, most of the time, not interested. at all. So in a group of 20 or 25, there may be 4 students who even care about writing. And so their writing will be strong because they actually care, you know.
Wow.
And when I do work with grad students, I find that 90% of them are strong writers because they care and they're readers, you know, whereas the undergrad who's just taking an intro course for the easy A, most of the time they're not a reader. Yeah, so it depends on the course.
Right. Having gone to our workshop, like if you could do it all over again, do you feel like doing an MFA was really profitable in that way, especially where you went?
Yeah, I think it was. You know, we live in a society where sometimes brand names can do things.
It's true.
Can move mountains, you know. But I would tell anyone, and my classmates from Iowa have heard me say this: an MFA is an MFA. You know, sometimes the history of a place makes it more attractive or more popular.
Sure.
But if I had not gotten to Iowa, I would have gone to Long Island University, you know, where I also got accepted. And they offer like almost no money, and I would have to continue working full time. But I was happy to go there, you know, I was happy to go there. But when a program is willing to pay the tuition, you go.
You go.
You know?
Absolutely, I understand.
Yeah.
You know, when I got ready to go to college, I was a poor kid from a little town in Arkansas. And my father asked me, he said, boy, you know, where you going to school?
Yeah.
I said, I'm going wherever someone will pay for me to go. If University of Alaska and give me scholarship, that's where I was going. I didn't care one bit where it was.
Exactly.
I just wanted to leave home.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to school, you know. And a little school here called Clark College paid me to come, and I went, and it was fantastic, and it was awesome. So, you know, I think really, I just wanted to go. You know? Do you believe that writers are born? I had a conversation with someone about this the other day. It's very complicated. Like, do you believe there's an inherent gift in you that most other people do not have? Or do you believe that you or most people can be trained to do what you do?
I don't think that writing is strictly like singing, where you have to be born with it.
You think you have to be born to sing?
Yeah, I think you have to be born with that talent.
You cannot be trained or taught to sing.
I think you have to have whatever it is that makes you not be off key. But I believe that a person who's born with that ability, I believe they can be trained
to do it better. Okay. Yeah. You think the same thing with writing?
With writing, I think that there is something in us that makes us hungry.
Is the us writers or humans? Okay.
Writers. Okay. To tell the story, whereas where I think people who aren't drawn to writing, they may have compelling stories, but they don't necessarily care to share them or write them down. I do think there's something inherent in writers that pulls us to it, but I think that there are writers. I think of them as like academic writers who the work is very, you know, I can't even come up with a word, but it's hard and it's factual and maybe not as emotional, you know, but it could be hailed as great writing.
Okay.
Clinical. Clinical.
Okay.
Is the word I'm going for.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm on the fence.
Okay. I think it's a fascinating question because, of course, we've gone to school, and I think we both would argue that school, of course, was helpful in several ways. Even grammar, you know, you learn that, right? But I wonder, you know, and I vacillate. I'm like you. I'm not saying on the fence because I wonder if, you know, people tell me all the time, "Oh, you're such a gifted writer," and in my head, I'm really like, "What is that?" I say, "I did my homework."
Yeah.
You know, and I wonder if there's something internal to a writer that makes them want to do art with words.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I think really a writer is one who wants to do art with words.
Yeah.
And I think that's different than people who learn the skill of writing.
I agree.
I believe that's different. Because I know many good writers who are not writers.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. And now that you put it that way, one thing that I know is a common denominator among most of my writer friends, or even writers who I think are great, who I have not met yet, there is some wound that I think we're trying to heal, or even if we have healed it, we want to share it.
Absolutely.
And I do find that, I'll just be frank, I do find that if I meet someone who has had a perfect life,
they're never good writers.
Their work reads like they have had a perfect life. You know, and you can miss that. You can feel that void. You know, that pain.
Yes. Oh, I absolutely agree. You know, it's funny you say that, because I think when I first read Toni Morrison, I was a sophomore at Clark in college, and we read, was it Song? I think it was Song of Solomon, maybe. And you know, I'm naive, right? I'm a little 19-year-old black boy out of Arkansas, and I started reading this book, and I said, this heifer's crazy. What the hell is wrong with this woman? And I was like, why would somebody assign me this? Somebody's breastfeeding somebody, and you walking around talking to them and you carrying on. And I said, you go into the grave, and I said, she's psychologically demented. Like, what's wrong with this woman? But then I said, it must be me, because she won prizes for this.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, once I was young then. But I think there's truth to what you're saying. I think some kind of way that there is the requirement of depths of trauma in order to write.
Right. I really do believe that. And there's been essays, you know, it was an essay in the New Yorker, I think, last year, maybe year before last, where, you know, just to sort of summarize it was kind of saying there's too many trauma books out or something like that. And I remember people on Twitter saying, but that's where a lot of it comes from. It comes from our trauma. We're writing to heal, or we're writing to share how we healed.
And do you think that's true for all writers, or do you think that's particularly true for Black writers?
I think definitely Black writers, and probably writers of color, you know. Yeah. I mean, I've read works by white people where they definitely, the characters definitely had their struggles, and then you know, you listen to an interview and the writer has too, you know.
Right.
But I also, you know, I am absolutely fine with people writing happy books that don't involve trauma. You know.
Absolutely.
I don't gravitate toward those books that much. I enjoy that on TV, you know. But when I read a book, I'm sort of looking for something. And I don't mind the book having some comedy in it, but I'm looking for something that's gonna tug on my heartstrings.
Yeah. You know, I've had so many people ask me, why don't you write funny stuff? You know, I laugh all the time, but I tell them I don't know no funny stuff. As a Black man in America, like I don't live no funny stuff. What's the funny stuff?
Yeah.
You know, you know, but I read lots of, and you're probably right, white writers who seemingly get the luxury of being fully comedic,
right,
and only comedic. I'm like, oh my God, wow, that sounds fun.
Yeah, must be nice.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely not my life. I want to circle back to these people. When you turned in this manuscript, was it a done deal? They said, great, let's publish.
No,
How did that go?
No. So the editor who was at Bloomsbury, who acquired the book, she was not expecting a mystery at all. So that was a little bit of a surprise, you know.
Let's back up just a little.
Yeah.
After you did in West Mills, did you do a 2-book deal?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of get us there, because then clearly there's an editor that's expecting a manuscript before one is birthed.
Right.
So tell us how that evolved.
Yeah. So after In West Mills was out, I had an idea for a second book. It was a very loose idea, you know, and my agent said, "What is it?" And I said, "Okay, I'll write it up." You know, and it involved some stories, some short stories that I had written. I'm not a very good short story writer. But so I said, I can use these stories to create characters for my next novel. And I sort of cleaned up those, you know, pieces of that story, wrote up a plan, sort of like a prospectus, you know, a detailed plan for the next book. And I said, could you send it to Bloomsbury and see, you know, what they think? And we sent it to my previous editor, and she shared it around, and they were like, yeah, this can work, you know. And so that's why they bought it.
Gotcha.
But again, I had not written the whole thing. So I, you know, started writing, realized that I was not getting any headway because it was a little slow, and decided I wanted to be plot driven. So when I turned it in, it was a mystery. And and she was surprised. She wasn't like, no, we're not doing this, you can't do it, you know. But she was surprised. And because it was my first go at it, it needed work, you know. And so she said, you know, she gave me a nice letter and told me what to focus on and how to tighten it up. And then unfortunately, she decided to leave and do other things. She had just had a second child and that sort of thing. And so I worked on it. And submitted it to my now editor, to Daniel. And then he and I jumped into the editing process. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever be one of those writers who can turn in a book and they'll be like, good, we'll print it tomorrow and put it on, you know, because I can be wordy, and then sometimes I forget little plot holes. Sure. And then you forget that you said a character was 50 and then later on you said 35. Right. So yeah, I thank God for editors and copy editors. Thank God for all those people. Yeah, it takes a village.
Are you a person who edits as you write?
I try not to.
You try not to.
Yeah,
okay.
I try not to because it'll slow me down.
Oh God,
it'll slow me down. So I try to get to.
I do it. I don't do it.
But I bet it saves you time when you turn the book in.
But it's so. Well, maybe I do, De'Shawn, brother. I do. I mean, I can write 5 hours and have 5 lines.
Got it.
You know, but I like those 5 lines.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
There are people who write 5 pages or 10 pages. And they say, "Well, I'll clean it up later." Right? Oh God, it's grueling. So by the time I finish the manuscript and I send it in, and they might have a few edits, I'm like, listen. I'm really about done. You know. But I think it probably is wiser just to write it first. Right. Again, that's not what I do, but I do think that's probably wisest. I torture myself.
Yeah, and I tell my students, especially my graduate students, because they'll send me packets.
Right.
And they'll say, thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about changing this, and I'll say, make a note that you might change that later. Right. But for right now, forward.
Right.
Get to the end.
Funny question. What do you do when someone sends you a book to blurb and you don't like it?
My schedule gets very full. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
That I just don't have time to.
I won't be able to get to it by the deadline. I'm sorry.
So you won't tell them, I'm sorry, but this book doesn't work?
No, I won't tell them.
Are you afraid to hurt their feelings?
I think that's it. Yeah, because people have declined to blurb both of my books, you know, and I'm like, God, I don't want to know why they declined. I would assume that their schedule is busy.
That's funny. That's really funny. Yeah. Is there anything? And of course, we're celebrating Decent People, certainly. So everyone out there, go buy Decent People. Go and buy Decent People. Read this book, absolutely. Is there anything in the process of this book or anything now thinking back in your recent past concerning this novel that you might alter a bit if you could?
Mm. Yes, I think sometimes I wish I had put Joe on the page. Joe is the lady whose fiance is being accused. Sometimes I wish I'd had more time with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then some days I'm like, no, I think I'm gonna have enough of her.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it changes. But either way, I think sometimes I'm like, I could have gone another 50 pages. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that I agree. I've read the book now, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that I needed more of Joe. I like Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I like Joe. I think, I don't know what I think. I was about to say something, then I decided I don't think I believe that either. I enjoy the book. So I'll let other folks read it first. One other question I want to ask before we invite some other folks into this, and that is, when you name your characters, out of what kind of cultural, emotional, psychological wellspring do you choose those names?
Most of the names come from my family tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with my family tree. I spend way too much time on Ancestry.com.
Really?
Yeah. It's
That's so funny. Really? So all your characters are named after some person in your Disney family?
I would say about 70% of them.
Really?
Yeah.
And does your family know that? If they read, they know.
Yeah. Most of them, I'm kind of the only one in my family who's kind of obsessed with it like that. So like my cousins that are my age, they wouldn't recognize those names. My mom and her siblings might recognize the names.
Okay.
Because these are people who have been long dead.
Okay.
You know, so my mom.
Like Lazarus, is that someone?
Lazarus is not.
Okay.
But no, Marian, Marva, and Lazarus, that's me a play on the Bible.
Okay.
You know.
I kind of got it, yeah.
But in West Mills, there are more names that I use from my family tree. Pleasant, you know, Pleasant, Iris, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of them are common, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, most of them come from my family tree, and I think it comes from my curiosity. Like, I wonder what, if I've seen a photo of them by chance, I wonder what they were like. Oh, I'm going to use their name and create a persona from them with this character.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And why do you think you're so obsessed with your family lineage? Like, I mean, that's a fantastic thing.
I wish I knew. I really wish I knew.
And you've done the Ancestry.com.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you from? Like, ultimately?
Yeah.
Or originally?
Well, the African, which is, is like 80% of my makeup.
Right.
West Africa, where I think a large amount of us.
Right.
Yeah. I did.
You remember specifically, like, was it Cameroon? Was it
Cameroon?
Really?
Yeah. And one of my friends,
I said Cameroonian because I'm Cameroonian.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And both of us, are bald headed and we have
big
heads.
Exactly. My friend Derek Rue, who has a book coming out next month called What Napoleon Could Not Do, he told me he's from Ghana. And he told me before I did that whole thing, he said, I can tell you where you're from. You don't have to pay that money.
Wow.
And I said, what's my lineage? He said, Cameroonian. And I said, how do you know? And he was like, by the shape of your head.
That's so
yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna send in the swab and all that and see when it comes back. And yeah, they showed the map.
Yeah, they showed that.
And he was like, I told you.
Awesome. I probably should pause here. Should I pause yet?
Yeah. We can take a few questions from our local audience and from our virtual audience.
Okay.
We got two here from our virtual audience, so I'll kick us off with one. So the first one is from S. Andrews, and they say, following up on the conversation y'all were having earlier, do you think a little bit of both talent and training are required to be a good writer? So do you think that you have to be born with it as well as training to express the raw talent?
I think it's a mix of both. I think that's the answer I'm gonna settle on for today.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, because I think the purpose of the MFAs or writing programs, even at the undergraduate level, is not to teach someone how to write from scratch. I believe that the understanding is that you already have something, and that the instructors are there to help you recognize what your strengths are and your weaknesses and help you with those. But I believe that reading is the best teacher for writing.
Absolutely.
I really do. And I don't even, with my undergraduates, I don't have them writing right away. You know, we're like a month in before I want to read anything that they've written. You know.
What is a book that you feel like has taught your students or you the most about writing?
For me, the book is probably Sula, right? Probably Sula. For my students, I don't ask them to read novels. I start them off with short stories. And the reason I do that is because I thought I was a short story writer, and then I expanded a story into a novel. And so what I tell my students is, if I give you a prompt that is only, say, gets 5 pages out of you, that prompt, you could expand that and it can become a 20-page story. And then you may write a 20-page story and feel like it has more branches, you know, and then you can expand it into a novel, you know. So I like to start small, essentially. Yeah.
Do any of our folks here in the audience locally have a question?
I do. When creative, when you're writing and the characters, you know, they're so alive. Once you complete the work, are they, and you start and you move on, and new characters move into your head. Do these old characters, and you as well, do the old characters, are you really done with them? Or do they come back and creep in and try to say, wait, I need to be a part of this new story, even though my story is not related to this new project?
For me, they do. I got really tempted with Decent People, especially because it's set in the same time. I got really tempted to bring like 7 of them back, you know. And I was like, nope, we just need good 4 to make some, you know, 3 heavily reuse heavily, and then another 2 or so can just pop in for a moment and recede. But yeah, I got tempted.
I'm probably on the other end. When I'm through with the book, I'm done. Those characters, it's done. I don't want to hear from them no more. I'm through with it. And when I start a new book, the other characters, they never creep in for me. No.
Do you think that's because you're such a place-based novelist? Like, by being concentrated in a specific neighborhood, does that kind of it naturally lend itself to re-encountering the same place?
Yeah, I think that's the reason why.
That would make sense.
And I think for a 3rd book, I feel pretty certain that I'm going to step away from West Mills.
Are you gonna step away from the South?
No, I'm gonna keep it in the South.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it in the South, but I think I'm gonna retire West Mills, or maybe come back to it for 4 or 5 or something, you know. But I do think I need to retire it so that I can create a whole new cast, a whole new world. Yeah, it won't be that different, I don't think, but yeah, but it'll be a real place.
One of our folks, Catherine, asks, De'Shawn, in what ways has writing in West Mills and Decent People been cathartic for you?
I think both books have allowed me to unburden some things that I can't say to people, or that I choose not to say to people in my life. You know, I'm sort of addressing it through fiction, and so that has been really good. Yeah, and it has also allowed me to view my hometown with a little bit more compassion. Like, I hated it, you know, especially when I was, you know, becoming a teenager and realizing that I was gay, and other people were realizing that I was gay. I mean, people were realizing it sooner. But I really couldn't wait to get away. I left soon after graduation. But now You know, as a 43-year-old and having written 2 books set in that area, I can look back at it with some forgiveness, you know. So yeah. Thanks.
Any of our other local folks want to ask a question before I offer our last virtual question?
Of course, I haven't read your new one yet, but in West Mills, when I looked at Azalea, your main character, it reminded me of Bernice McFadden's Sugar,
Yeah.
the character in that. So my question is, how often have you used something you read in some of your favorite novels in your own work?
I think it happens subconsciously, you know. So with Sula, for example, when I finished the book, I realized that Knott's death at the end is very similar to, it's the conversation that Sula has with Nell just before she dies. That final
Famous conversation.
Yeah. And without realizing it, I had Knott and Pep have a very, kind of like a little argument, you know, right before she dies. And I was just like, wow, I think I kind of copycatted that a little bit, you know. But I think it happens without us realizing it most of the time. When we read an author a lot and have a book so imprinted in our minds, you know, I don't think most of us do it on purpose. I think we try our best not to, but some kind of way it still happens, you know. Yeah.
My question is, just listening to what you just said, in what way or ways are you all retelling African American experiences if you are trying to move away from what Morrison or Walker wrote? Like, what are you telling us differently? Because you're talking about legacy and heritage and place, and they did those well. So are you, what is it called, pastiche? Are you really redoing them in honor of them? Or are you in some way trying to move away from it and tell us a different story, perhaps in a different place for different Black people?
Yeah, yeah. For me, I feel like when you get right down to the root of a lot of African American work, I feel like because things don't change for us that much, I think it is different iterations of the same stories. What I try to do is, with Decent People, for example, I can't think of, maybe other than Morrison's Paradise, where a group of women who are not all Black are, you know, are shot in the convent. Where I try to do something different is, okay, the people who are being murdered are not just anyone. It's a doctor, you know, the town's only Black doctor, you know. And then there's other things that are different that makes it. So I think that maybe the core of the story is the same: race, class, you know, those things. But I try to use different vehicles to comment on the same issues, I think. Yeah.
You know, I think I do try to tell a very different story. Like one of the things that I discovered that seems so utterly simple, but one of the things I discovered when I started writing is that I could not find any Black male novelists who had written about fathers and sons together. I found men who had written about the pain of not having a father, right? But I didn't remember any books where the father and son traveled or moved together, right? The other thing I thought was very interesting is I couldn't remember books that talked about a brother and sister as siblings, as co-characters in the same book. I read many books about girls, right? And I read some about boys, but I didn't remember any where the boy and the girl were in the same book, which seems so utterly simple, right? It's like, what's happening? It seemed like our experience was far too categorized, right? That we kept telling the story as separate entities, right? And so that's one thing I think that's fascinating. The other thing, like with books like Perfect Peace, I think the story of the trans Black person is a very, very, very new story.
Yeah.
Which I think most people have not touched at all. In fact, the trans novel, I'm not even sure right now, most people could name one trans novel they've ever read. I'm not even sure how many have been published, quite frankly.
Yeah. And especially where the person is trans from early
That's right.
childhood.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Perfect's mother makes the decision the second she is born.
Yeah. And I think that's why that book has really been fascinating for so many people, because I think that story in Black, right, is a very new story. Right. And so my prayer is that I am doing something very, very new. The irony is also, I think there are gaps and places in our historical narrative, even in the experience, where people have not told any of the story yet. Right. Because some of those places also, even like the trans story, are so difficult and are so emotionally charged that most people have just steered away from it.
Yeah.
Right. Like the story of the rape, the story of the rape of Black men during slavery.
Right.
Like, I'm waiting on that story.
We don't hear about it.
Yeah. Folks have talked about, well, of course, the prophets of Robert Jones.
Right. Yeah.
And I have my assessment of that book, but that's not what this forum is for. But one book won't do it.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of stories to tell. The other thing I find fascinating is I would like a novel also that tells a story, and this is, I mean, it just seems so utterly simple to me, but I'm like, maybe I missed it, though I think I'm a wide reader, and that is the story of the teacher. The story, especially of the Black teacher.
Okay.
And the experience of a teacher and what a teacher endures, the price a teacher pays teaching in a classroom. We've all had teachers, etc. But ironically, most teachers never end up telling their own story as teachers, although most of them taught storytelling.
Right.
Yeah. And I think there's some magnificent stories that teachers would have to tell, but I just think they haven't been told yet. I think they've been lived.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That TV show, Auburn Elementary, proves how much people want to watch.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So to close us out from our audience questions, Audrey asks, have you written nonfiction, De'Shawn in particular? And if you write nonfiction, what topics do you write about? But before you answer, I'll just plug one more time. Dr. Black's new book is coming out. Boom. Black on Black. Do you want to just say real quick, what's it about? Why now? Tell us just.
Yes. I'm so excited. This is my first nonfiction effort, my first essay collection, Black on Black. And it features 14 different essays on various topics, like the problems and promises of HBCUs. Another essay is Keep or Close the Black Church. Another essay is The Price of the Closet. Another essay is Should We Have Integrated? And it's those kinds of essays. Yeah, I'm extraordinarily excited about it. So check me out.
So you're not pulling any punches.
I'm holding no punches. That's right.
Excellent. So De'Shawn, do you write nonfiction? And if so, what topics do you like to write?
So far I've only written like one little piece, and that was back when In West Mills came out, and it was about the real life knot. We weren't able to get it placed as an essay, so I ended up selling it to be a part of a short story well, no, I don't know if it's a short story collection. I think it's a novel, a collaborative novel that Margaret Atwood sort of organized. And I'm not sure when it comes out, but basically I turned it into fiction, you know. And but I want to try to write an essay. A couple of the people at Bloomsbury pitched an idea to me because they know about my fascination with genealogy, and they said, "Why don't you try to write an essay about your fascination with your family tree and stuff?" And I said, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." I have not written a word of it, but it is something I want to try. So don't Google looking for it. It might be another 2 years.
That's a good topic.
Yeah.
So our last question I like to ask authors is, you know, we talked about sort of the giants and the ancestors that you're standing with, but is there anybody up and coming that, you know, maybe is a contemporary of y'all's or even younger that you just want to shout out? You're like, hey, if you haven't heard this, maybe somebody that you think is under recognized that you want to shout out their book or their work. It doesn't have to be a book, but you know, since we're in a bookstore.
I know he's certainly not under-recognized, but somebody who I think is just absolutely wonderful and fascinating and so unbelievably committed to supporting other Black writers is Charis.
Yeah.
I think he's just absolutely phenomenal and wonderful, and he is just so remarkably supportive in every single way he can. I just love his being. I love who he is. I love what he does. So I would certainly shout him out.
I'm going to mention a poet. I don't read a lot of poetry, but I have a colleague at Pacific University named Adrian Christian. And it's the female version of the Adrian. And she has a poetry book out called Worn, W-O-R-N. And listen, those poems will wear your emotions out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can.
It's already out.
It's already out. You
Okay.
can find it on Amazon for sure. But you know, Worn by Adrian Christian poetry.
All right. Well, thank y'all. We love to shout people out, and we love Casey Lehman. He has been at Charis since his very first book came out.
Yes.
So he does more for the community of writers than almost anyone.
That's right.
So we are going to say goodnight to our friends who are watching virtually worldwide. Thank you so much for being with us. But before we do that, we want to make sure that you click this teal button at the bottom center of the screen to buy Decent People from Charis. If you do that, we will send you a signed copy while supplies last. We will also have Dr. Black sign some copies of his books, and we would encourage you to please pre-order his new nonfiction book, Black on Black. So y'all stay well. Good night. Thank you for being with us.